Well, joining us now is our political panel. Susan Smith is principal with the Blue Sky Strategy Group, Tim Powers, chair of SUMA Strategies, and Anne McGrath, who is now principal secretary to the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. Hello to the three of you, and Anne, congratulations.
Thank you.
So listen, let's begin with Premier Danielle Smith on unveiling these new transgender policies. And really, she follows other jurisdictions. We saw something like this in New Brunswick, something like this in Saskatchewan. Is this going to be a wedge issue in Ottawa now and into the next election?
I think so. I think what Premier Smith has brought forward has put ideology before people, politics before people. She's trying to make it a wedge issue in her own province, but I do think it's something that will be a wedge issue in terms of where people land on how you care about transgendered youth, young people, and the opportunities they have to feel comfortable, not be persecuted, and kind of be ratted out by their teachers, forced by legislation. So I think I would look to the opposite, or the government. The Liberals will probably push Mr. Poilievre on this. I would think the NDP would push Mr. Poilievre very hard on this. It will be a divisive issue. Unfortunately, it should be an issue that children should be left alone as far as that goes, in terms of being able to be and say and who they are. But yes, I think it's going to become quite politicized even further.
Tim?
I'd have to agree with Susan, and it's so unfortunate. I have friends who have children who are engaged in this discussion now, trying to figure it out. And I don't know what the intent of Premier Smith, Premier Higgs, and others. What is the policy problem they're trying to solve? I don't think they're doing anything that is constructive here. I don't know how informed it is by mental health and wellness advice, by actual physical and medical advice, and it's just a shame. You know, the federal Liberals are giving another side to it. I just think everybody's got to be really careful here, because you are talking about people who are going through one of the most difficult things they will go through in their lives, and making this political is terrible.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying reminds me of a lot of the commentary I'm reading, people concerned that kids, teenagers are now going to be used as a political football. Do you see this becoming far more of a wedge issue?
Well, I think it is intentional that it's a wedge issue. I mean, you don't do a video announcement like that. I mean, it was done. It was staged. It was practiced. This was not like an off-the-cuff answer to a question in a scrum. This was an announcement done by the Premier, intentionally, I think, to be political, to be divisive, to be a wedge, and to appeal to a group that has pretty well taken control of her party, and where she had to do she has to do things to appease this group, take back Alberta, and I think that she meant to do it, and she knew, I believe, she knew what the consequence would be. She was aware of that, and she does it anyway.
Super cowardly, too, to drop it in a video and not do a news conference, right? Because it stands out there. She gets no challenging questions. She sees what opponents and proponents are going to say all night. She's doing her news conference. She's to do her news conference today. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I think it's a really cowardly approach. She gets to prep for all the tough stuff and then, give the pat answers or the textbook answers on that. If you're going to make a ridiculous policy, stand and take the heat for it.
Yeah, and I think Tim's point is really important, which is how dangerous it is.
Yes.
It is like, I mean, we all know people who are either grappling with this now, or are feeling targeted, or feeling like, who's next? And I think it is quite dangerous to do something like this.
Look, of course there's a role for parents and caregivers in a discussion with a child who is transitioning, but I don't think a legislative remedy from government is the way to go. And it's conservative premiers who are doing this. I find this really off-putting, because if it were a different circumstance where the government was telling you what to do, they would be losing the plot. I mean, I'm way offside the Conservatives on this because, as I say, I see this on a very personal level, and I don't see any of the policies that are being suggested would help the people that are going through this journey right now.
Okay. Well, of course, something that we'll keep tracking. But speaking of wedge issues, I do want to bring in medically assisted death, because today we heard from Mark Holland. We knew that the government was going to push the deadline in terms of extending it to those who suffer from mental illness, but that's now a deadline in 2027 after the next election. Is the government bowing down to public pressure who are concerned about this extension rather than meeting the civil rights of Canadians who have asked for this to be extended?
I think this is an incredibly complicated topic, and the government has navigated it incrementally, which is the way you needed to do it. You couldn't go so far and try and pull back and have, drastic consequences. There were 7 premiers and territorial leaders who wrote to the health minister and said, we're not ready for this. We need a pause before this goes forward. A joint House and Senate committee did a study, and the majority concluded that Canada is not ready for this. It is very challenging for the people who've been waiting for it, but it's such a complicated scenario that we need to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, actually, the approach that's being taken here by the provinces and the federal government is one that should be taking place in the policy we just talked about a moment. Let's have a mature discussion about this and what is the problem we're trying to solve. Ultimately, I think, as somebody who's dealt with mental health and wellness issues, who knows a fair bit about the field and knows people have taken their lives because of the suffering that they've had, I think the legislation will get to a place when it will recognize that some mental health and wellness conditions are irredeemable, but it's okay to do the work to get there. And the second point I'd make is, again, I think this debate gets grossly simplified. You don't simply show up at your GP one day and say, I would like to end my life. Credit to the legislative process that many people were part of. There's a whole series of things that have to happen there. So again, it's okay to take the time here. I hope they do get to a place, though, after the time they recognize that there are people who are dealing with mental health issues that are so significant and so severe, they are not irredeemable.
Anne?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very complicated and sensitive issue. I think that it was personally, I think it was the right thing to do to pause it and to have an extension. My only concern is that I would like it so that they don't kind of decide to start dealing with it in the last month of 2027. Yeah. Like the work needs to happen, so they need to actually not see 2027 as, kind of an end point where they can just kind of slam into. They have to start the work now and get it underway. But I think it's absolutely right. The provinces have a lot of work to do, and they weren't ready. And I think it would have been grossly irresponsible to pursue to kind of just move up against that original deadline and get it done when it wasn't possible to do it right.
Can I pose to you, though, the dissenting opinion? And this was the dissenting opinion of the Special Parliamentary Committee, and it was Senators Pamela Wallin, Stan Kutcher, Marie-Françoise Medji. And they essentially made the argument, you can change the criminal code now. And if a jurisdiction, be it a province or a territory, needs to delay, it doesn't mean to say that they have to bring it about right away. They can take the time that they need to bring it about, but you can change the criminal code now. What do you make of that dissenting opinion?
I think it's, I haven't looked at what the detail is on that. I think that the majority made a very measured opinion. I think the Premier's writing in saying our systems aren't ready for this. I think dissenters obviously have reasons that they believe they could put forward, but if you're the physician that's participating in that, you don't want any kind of gray zone. You need to be, while there may be criminal code implications, you're within each of your provinces, and it puts an inordinate amount of pressure on the practitioners who have to be engaged in that kind of process as well.
Just adding to that, I think adding the dissenting opinion to the conversation right now is an important thing to do, to see what's possible. But, we're talking about ending lives, regardless of the circumstance. We can take a little bit of time to get it right.
Yeah, Anne?
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility for doctors, for governments, and I think that it is absolutely essential that if you're going to take on that kind of responsibility, that you know what you're doing and how you're doing it and what all the implications are.
Okay, running out of time, so I'm going to jump to our last topic here, and that has to do with fundraising, because this week we saw the Conservative Party announce a record-breaking amount, more than $35 million in 2023, the Liberals raising 15.6, the NDP 6.8. What does that mean in the kind of strategies the parties can pursue now and leading up to the next election, given the dollar amounts raised?
Well, hats off to the Conservatives for their fundraising machine. It works and has always worked very well. They've done small amounts with big base. What it's going to mean is they're going to have a lot of money to spend. Get ready, Canada. You're going to be listening to Pierre Poilievre on the radio, and he's going to be in your social media feed. Maybe it'll annoy people over time because they're going to hear so much about him. But watch for more attack ads. Watch for more promotion ads. They've got the biggest budget, so they can blow what they need in advance. Hopefully there's no Super Bowl ad. The Liberals have got money too. I think you're going to see them deploying more of it now that there's a new director of communication and there's a bit more wind in the sails, and they have to respond to where they are in the polls these days. They'll be spending money too. It won't be at the level that the Conservatives are spending it at.
Yeah, like you thought you saw a lot of gambling ads. Hang on, Canada. You're sick of gambling ads. The only thing I would add to the analysis is that what kind of an advantage it also creates, and I'm sure Anne has been dealing with this, is the nimbleness that it allows to go after local ridings. Every time I'm home in Atlantic Canada, on radio stations and in jurisdictions I'd never thought I'd hear Conservative ads, I do. Why am I hearing them? Because those ridings are being targeted. So it's not just the big national ad buy, it's the ability to pop into seats where they want to flip and get into that local media that's still, as you well know, so valuable and so important. That may be a bigger threat than any new "here's Pierre and his family" sort of ad that is out there.
Yeah, and a big advantage is having that kind of money outside of a RIP period, right? So there are no restrictions on how much money they can spend or what they can do with the money or that kind of thing. So that gives them a very big advantage because they're not having to hold on to that for the RIP period where there are restrictions on how much you can spend and all of those kinds of things. The other thing I have to say is that having the most money doesn't always mean you win.
Okay, but what does it mean for the NDP, though, if they haven't raised as much and we're going to be bombarded with these ads, as is the prediction, quite frankly, the promise as well, because we heard that during the Conservative National Convention.
Anne is launching her own YouTube channel, and she's going to run all the ads.
She's a TikToker.
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to have to subscribe real quickly on that one.
Absolutely. No, I mean, for us, it's the largest, it's the best fundraising, non-election year fundraising that we've had, so we're quite happy with that. It does mean that we will continue to do the work to try and get the message out, but money helps in politics. It absolutely helps, and I think that the other thing I will say is that the Conservatives spent a lot of money to make that much money. It costs money to raise that much money.
Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say it indicates where public opinion is right now?
Is that a softball? Look, money follows momentum, or momentum and money are often combined. Though the history of the Conservative Party, even when they weren't as faring well in the polls, they have a more in-depth individual fundraising system that has always produced dividends for them.
Okay. Well, always good to have the conversation. Glad that we're back after the Christmas break. Nice to see all three of you. Susan, Tim, and Anne, thank you. We'll do it again next week.
Excellent.